the West should be worried about Golden State, that they could go on a sneaky run?
I've said that yesterday as we showed in the cold open, and obviously I say that today. We understand they're not the best. You're vying for a play-in, okay? Well, let's take this into consideration and just break it down, doggy. Number one, you're in a position right now where you've beaten the Lakers 3 or 4 times this year. You're only a half game behind them. So you're in a position to get home court advantage for the 9-10 play-in the event that you run the table and win the rest of your regular season games. The Lakers got 2 games to go. You got 3 games to go. You'd be in a tie if you ran the table and they won as well. And obviously it'd be a situation where the tiebreaker will go to you because you've beaten them 3 or 4 times. So that game would be in Golden State, even though Golden State has been better, ironically, on the road this year. After being horrific on the road last year, they're better on the road this year than they were at home this year. We get that. But they're also a game back of the 8th slot. And because you're in the 8th slot, that's what Steph Curry was talking about, 2 shots at the apple. You're 7th or 8th seed. You know what? You win, you're the 7th seed. You lose, you still play the winner of the 9-10 seed. So you get 2 cracks at being in the playoffs. You also get an opportunity to decide, or be in a position rather where you could go against a 1 or 2 seed where one opponent might be better for you than the other. One opponent might be worse. I'm looking at Golden State, and as I articulated yesterday with Legs and Shannon, is when I said this. We know what Steph Curry's going to bring to the table. But what if Klay Thompson got hot? What if Kuminga, Podziemski, Wiggins were hitting perimeter shots? You have to remember, in the game of basketball, when you are elite from the perimeter, you force teams to capitulate to your style of play to some degree, as opposed to being who they are. Like, for example, if you're Minnesota, you can't stay big with Rudy Gobert on the court if Golden State is hitting jump shots all over the place. Denver's Denver, and Jokic is going to be Jokic, and we get that part. But anybody else that you're going up against, when you think about a team as elite at shooting the basketball on occasion, as the Warriors have shown and proven over the years they can be, you're talking about perimeter shooting, you're talking about open court opportunities, you're also talking about accuracy at the free throw line. You know this from all of your years of doing great radio and covering sports. The game slows down in the postseason time. And as a result, all of a sudden, you're going to slow down. You're going to find yourself getting to the free throw line more. And if in the event that you can't slow them down and they're getting open court opportunities or perimeter shot opportunities, I think that puts the Golden State Warriors in a position to be incredibly scary. They're a 10th seed, a 9th seed, or 8th seed. They're playing with relative house money because the expectations for them are minimal compared to some of those other teams that have been starving for an opportunity to elevate themselves within the pantheon of the Western Conference. And you're saying, okay, you get them on their heels. Let's see how they respond then, particularly if it's a young team like Minnesota or Oklahoma City. And that's what I'm looking at when I look at the Golden State Warriors. This is why I believe they could still be a threat, because I can't rule out last night what I saw. Draymond ain't going to shoot 5 for 5 from three-point range every day. We get that. But Klay Thompson, what you saw from him, 27 points, 10 of 16 shooting, 5 of 10 from 3, that's something he can do. Steph Curry hit all 6 of his threes. That's something that he could do. Andrew Wiggins, 7 of 12 from the field, 3 of 5 from three-point range. That's something he could do. Kuminga and what we see from him. It wasn't a great game last night, but I'm looking at them, doggy, and I'm saying Golden State is somebody to be worried about. Do not dismiss them.
Don't disagree with you whatsoever. Now, I will say this. If they want Minnesota to win tonight, because Minnesota's at Denver. The winner of that game is going to be the 1 seed.
Okay.
And if Denver wins, they're going to be the 1 seed. And if Phoenix ends up as the 8, they're going to get Denver in the first round.
Phoenix.
If the Warriors end up at 8, they're going to get them in the first round. And you don't want that.
You don't want that.
You get Minnesota, you get Oklahoma City, you can live with it.
That's right.
You do not want Denver in that first round.
That's right.
So they would prefer.
None of them do, by the way. Nobody wants them in the first round.
But you're talking about Golden State making a long run.
Right.
You're not talking about Phoenix making a long run.
Right.
So if you want the Warriors to get hot, they have a puncher's chance.
Yes.
I saw him Sunday night against Utah. They made 1 million threes. He had 30 points, Thompson, in 23 minutes, and Curry didn't even play. And as you said last night, they made 23. No, Anthony Davis didn't play.
Right.
So you got to keep that in mind. But if they do end up the 8 and Minnesota beats Denver tonight, could Golden State beat Minnesota in the first round playoff series? Yes. They could beat beat them.
Yes.
But the problem is, if Denver wins tonight and Phoenix and the Warriors are stuck in that 8-9, that 9-10 thing, at the best they're going to do is 8.
It's 8, right.
And that means they're going to have to play Denver.
That's right.
So they need the Timberwolves, for your proclamation to come to fruition,
Right.
you need Denver out of that 1 seed, is what I'm trying to say.
I got it.
And you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. But they're only a game out of number 8.
Correct.
Which means that if they get that 8th seed,
So
because
they can
Sacramento
get the
sinks,
7th seed
they
and
can
not
get the
have-
7th seed
Right.
and then not have Denver.
Well, unless Denver loses
Right,
tonight.
right.
But
There you go.
chances are Denver will win tonight.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And right now, Phoenix is playing horrifically. They're down 35-4 last night at home.
We'll get into that later. Yeah, no question.
That drove. I know I don't want to steal
Right.
it because we are going to mention that later, but that drives me crazy. Sacramento has not played that well.
Not at all.
They blew a 21-point lead last night in Oklahoma City. So I would say right now the most likely scenario is the Warriors and Lakers will end up at the 7 and the 8 spot.
Okay.
Both?
Both. Well, I mean, because if Golden State jumps to the 7 and beats the 8, or jumps the 8 and beats the 7, and then the Lakers and they win, they're automatically in the playoffs.
Right.
And then the Lakers would play Sacramento or Phoenix and play the winner.
So you're anticipating, just so we can crystallize this for the audience, you're anticipating that Phoenix, who has a 2-game lead, will ultimately fold.
Well, Phoenix has a very hard schedule.
Okay.
Clippers, Kings, and T-Wolves all on the road.
Wow. Wow. So Phoenix could end up being a 9th or 10th seed.
They could.
You're
And
saying
Sacramento's
Golden
not
State moves up,
And then they
the
get-
Lakers remain in a 9 or 10th
That's
slot,
it.
and ultimately end up the 8th
You're
seed.
cooking with some gas.
Okay.
Now you're starting to get an idea here. That's exactly what I'm thinking about.
All right.
So, and I think that's possible. Plus, the Kings have played barely. Sammy, can you look it up for me, please? Golden State, Sacramento, who won the season series? Because that's important if they finish tied.
Well, the interesting part about it as well is this. That's what the NBA would love. If you got an opportunity to have Steph and LeBron in the playoffs,
Oh, that's what they want.
remember, we were anticipating that both of them could be out
We discussed
before the playoffs begin.
Absolutely.
Now we're talking about a scenario where they could both be in,
Absolutely.
which would be good for the league.
And I think they can get both
Stephen A.,
in.
do you think the Bucks should be concerned about this?
Absolutely, without question. First of all, they were checking to make sure there was nothing wrong with the Achilles. And so the fact that the Achilles has come back straight, that's a good thing. But for him to go down the way that he went, this is Giannis we're talking about here. This is a locomotive coming at you and has been doing so for years. We've never seen him do that. And so as a result, it kind of scares you. And then let's remember, albeit it might have been a bit higher, wasn't in the same location as Kevin Durant. Remember, before the Achilles actually tore
had a calf.
during the NBA Finals against Toronto when he was a member of the Golden State Warriors, it was actually the calf injury that, that first derailed him. And so it's an indication that potentially something else could be going wrong. That is Giannis Antetokounmpo we're looking at right there. That is not a man that goes down like that. That is not a man that, and then he goes down, not only does he sit down on his own non-contact, but then when the team rallies around him, he lays back down like, oh my God, because he was concerned. This man works out religiously, takes care of his body. When I ran into him, I spoke to him when they were in Minnesota, when we had the ESPN that night in Minnesota, All Access that day. Giannis and I were together that night. He was like, look, man, I'm in the gym all the time. I woke up the next morning. I'm getting ready to go eat some breakfast. This brother had just finished 2 hours in the gym. And he talked about LeBron. And he talked about Kobe. And he talked about others. And how religiously they went about the business of taking care of their body. And how his number one obligation was to pay attention to his health to make sure he's in peak condition. He does not mess around. And so for him to go down like that, non-contact, for them to be examining to make sure there's no Achilles injury going on, tells you the significance of what he was feeling, how concerned he was, and damn it, if he's concerned, you should be concerned. So I would tell you right now, there's cause for concern with the Milwaukee Bucks. Again, the playoffs are coming up. That's obviously what this is all about. If he says he can go, you play him. But you got to have a raised eyebrow. You need to be incredibly concerned because it's Giannis. He doesn't do stuff like that. That stuff doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen with him. I'm very concerned about it.
I think you have to be. Plus, you got Durant against Toronto when he tore his Achilles, and that because he had the history of the calf thing.
That's right.
So that makes
weeks
me nervous
earlier,
too.
and he was out for weeks when he came back.
And then
Right.
nobody made that connection,
That's
and we
right.
all know what happened. Now, here's the positive. Let's assume it isn't the Achilles. They have 10 days off. They're not going to. He's not in the play-in. He's not going to have to worry about playing a game until next weekend.
Okay.
Because next week is the playing games, right? There's no best of sevens.
That's right.
Season ends Sunday. They don't seem to care.
Season ends Sunday, play-in begins Tuesday, ends Friday, playoffs begin
Saturday and Sunday. And the Bucks certainly don't seem to care based on their play of where they end up with the seats.
Right.
I mean, they lost to Toronto, Washington. They lost to all these teams.
I wouldn't say don't care. They just haven't been playing well.
Well, I mean, all right, but Steve, I mean, they lost to Memphis. I mean, they really have hit rock bottom. They won last night, I understand. So my point is, he does have 10 or 11 days. Now, if you're going to tell me that this is just a calf, 11 days. Now, last year he was hurt against the Heat and they lost. But 11 days, I'm not a doctor. Isn't that enough time to get himself organized to play in that first playoff game next weekend?
Kevin Durant was out for weeks before he came back.
I know he was.
And when he came back, the very first game he came back,
Second quarter.
the Achilles tore.
Yep.
And he was putting on the show. He was. Let me tell you something right now.
He was playing great.
If Kevin Durant hadn't gotten hurt,
they
they'd have
would've won.
swept. They'd have swept Toronto.
Oh,
They'd
absolutely.
have took them out in 4 straight with Kawhi Leonard. Okay, but Kevin Durant comes out there, and you remember he's dancing around, shuffling his feet pre-game with the Golden State Warrior teammates at the time. Comes out on the court playing lights out because he's one of the greatest players we've ever seen in NBA history. And then lo and behold, he makes a move, and it happens. It happens. So to me, you saying 10 days means nothing to me. It means nothing to me. It's just a matter of, is it worth the risk? The playoffs are worth the risk of you going out there. This is what you play for. The playoffs are worth the risk to put Antetokounmpo out there, the Greek freak. If he says he's ready to go and the medical staff says he's ready to go and we've done all we can do and he seems okay, then of course you take your chances. You don't take the chance if there's any kind of trepidation physically, like it doesn't seem right. You don't take that chance.
Doesn't seem like they feel it is, though, because they said the Achilles were fine when they did this MRI.
Well, they said the Achilles was fine.
So from that standpoint, you got to play him.
I get you. But remember, with KD, they said the Achilles was fine.
Well, if that's the case, then we'll see Giannis next year. I mean, sometimes you got to take it. You got to. If the doctor says there's nothing wrong with the Achilles,
right,
and he wants to play, you got to play him.
I totally agree with you. If the doctor says there's nothing wrong with the Achilles, if Giannis is saying he's feeling fine, you got to play him.
Play to win the game.
You got to play him. But it's a scary proposition, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's a scary situation.
Very scary. And on the Bucks, they're a mess. We'll get to them later too. They're a mess. The Bucks, a mess.
By the way,
Sacramento has the tiebreaker over Golden State. So they're a game and a half ahead, Steve.
Still stuck.
Not one. We just checked it. I had the staff.
Thank you.
If you don't mind.
Who's a game and a half ahead?
Sacramento's got the tiebreaker over the Warriors.
So
it's a game and a half.
But yeah, you can.
So that makes it a little tricky.
By the way, Giannis, 31.2 points per game, fourth in the NBA. Leads the NBA in fast break points in the paints per game, leads the NBA.
I guess he did his homework.
20.9 points. On pace to become the first player in NBA history to average 30 points per game on 60% shooting from the field. Bucks were up by as many as 43 and was up 75-38 at halftime on the Celtics last night. I forgot to mention at halftime. So I don't know what the Celtics. I don't know what
your point is you don't want him playing in the second half?
They did. Why?
You're